I was on the subway heading to my son's office, holding a paper bag with a slice of apple pie inside, still warm from the oven. I told myself he might smile when he saw it, that maybe the smell of brown sugar and cinnamon would remind him of who we used to be. I hadn't slept the night before. My hands wouldn't stop shaking, and somewhere between the third and fourth stop on the red line, I almost got off the train and went home. I almost did, but then the doors opened at Central Square, and an old man stepped aboard, and everything changed. Tell me where you're watching from, then answer this honestly. Do you believe one small act of kindness can reverse a verdict that's already been handed down? Drop your city and the word believe if you do, because what I'm about to tell you made me a believer for the rest of my life. My name is Joe Hartwell. I'm 65 years old. I worked as a plumber for 38 years, built a small contracting business out of nothing, and raised my son, Marcus, in a house I paid for with every calloused knuckle I had. 24. This is what happened the day I thought I was going to lose everything, and the day I learned that God has a way of putting the right people on the same train. I checked my watch when I boarded at Porter Square. 2:47 inches the afternoon. Marcus had told me to be at his office by 4. I'd left early because the red line was unpredictable and because I wanted time to think about what I was going to say. I found a spot near the center of the car, grabbed the overhead bar, and kept my paper bag close to my chest. The train was crowded for a midday Wednesday. Students, office workers, a couple of nurses still in their scrubs. Near the doors, a young woman in her mid-20s sat in the accessibility seat closest to the entrance. She was typing on a laptop balanced on her knees, earphones in, completely absorbed. I noticed her the way you notice things when you have nothing to do but stand and think. At Central Square, the doors slid open, and an old man came aboard. He moved slowly, one hand gripping the metal rail by the steps, the other holding a cloth grocery bag that looked nearly empty. His coat was too thin for January in Boston. His shoes had seen better years. He was at least 80, maybe more, and his breathing was labored from the short climb up from the platform. He looked around the car for somewhere to sit. The woman with the laptop didn't look up. The man next to her shifted toward the window and pulled out his phone. Neither of them moved. The old man stood near the doors, swaying slightly with the train's motion. He reached up for the overhead bar and couldn't quite grasp it. His fingers slipped. The train jolted through a curve near the tunnel, and he stumbled sideways. I crossed the distance between us in 2 steps and caught him by the arm. "I've got you." He grabbed my forearm with both hands, steadying himself. "Thank you," he said. His voice was quiet but clear. "Thank you very much." I kept hold of him and turned to the woman in the accessibility seat. "Excuse me, would you mind giving up your seat? This gentleman needs it." She pulled out one earbud and looked at me like I'd asked her to solve a math problem. "I'm working," she said. He almost just fell. She glanced at the old man, then back at her screen. "There are other seats. Those aren't accessibility seats. This one is." She rolled her eyes and clicked something on her laptop with exaggerated slowness. "Fine," she muttered, closing the computer and gathering her things with the energy of someone being deeply wronged. She moved to a regular seat 3 rows back. I waited until the old man was settled before I let go of his arm. He sat down with a long exhale, like he'd been holding his breath for blocks. He looked up at me. His eyes were pale gray, sharp, the kind of eyes that had seen a great deal and forgotten very little. "You didn't have to do that," he said. "I know. Most people wouldn't." I shrugged. "My father taught me you speak up when something's wrong. It wasn't a hard call." He studied me for a moment with an expression I couldn't quite read. Not gratitude, exactly. Something more like recognition, like he'd been watching for something specific and had just found it. The train moved through the tunnel. I swayed with it, holding the bar with one hand, the paper bag in the other. After a moment, the old man looked up again. "What's in the bag?" I almost laughed. "Apple pie. My son's favorite." His expression softened. "You baked it yourself?" "This morning. He used to eat half the pan before it cooled down." I paused. That was a long time ago. "But you still made it," the old man said. "That means something." I looked out at the dark tunnel wall and didn't answer. We rode in silence for a stop. Then he asked where I was headed, and I told him. My son worked at a wealth management firm downtown, Meridian Capital Partners. on the 14th floor of the Hancock Tower on Clarendon Street, one of the most prestigious firms in the city. Something moved behind the old man's eyes, quick and quiet, like a fish turning below the surface of still water. He didn't say anything, just nodded slowly. I kept talking. I'm not sure why. Maybe because he listened the way people rarely do anymore, with his full attention, without glancing at a phone. Maybe because I hadn't said any of this out loud and it had been sitting in my chest too long. I told him I was meeting Marcus to sign some papers, property papers. The house I'd lived in for 22 years, over in Jamaica Plain, a 3-bedroom with a yard and a garage where I used to work on engines on Saturday mornings. It was in Marcus's name. He asked me how that happened. I told him. Year 2001. Marcus was 11. I was 43, working 60-hour weeks, trying to save enough to stop renting. I found the house, made an offer, scraped together a down payment of $34,000. Money I'd saved over 8 years, dollar by dollar. The bank approved the loan on one condition. My credit had taken a hit 2 years before because a contractor I'd partnered with disappeared and left me holding the debt. The loan officer said putting the property in Marcus's name as primary deed holder would smooth the process. Joint arrangement, she called it. Family trust structure. Totally standard. I believed her because I was tired and because I wanted to give my son something permanent, something no one could take away. A home. So I signed. $562 a month for 22 years. I never missed one. Not when the furnace broke and cost me $4,000. Not when I got appendicitis in 2014 and was out of work for 6 weeks. Not once. Marcus grew up in that house. He played Little League on the field 2 blocks over. He had his first date the summer before junior year, and I watched him back the old Civic down the driveway like he owned the world. I paid his college tuition, his books, his first and last month's rent on an apartment in Cambridge when he started his MBA. I was proud of every single dollar I spent on him. Then he got the job at Meridian, and things shifted, the way things sometimes do. So gradually you don't notice until you're already standing outside what used to be a warm room. Calls got shorter. Visits stopped. He brought home a girlfriend, Candace, in 2023, and she was polite to me the way people are polite to furniture. Last Thanksgiving, I set 2 places at the table. He sent a text at noon saying they were going to her family's place in Connecticut. I put the food away and watched football alone. This Tuesday, he called. Not to talk, to schedule. He said the house was appraised at $410,000. He wanted me to sign a transfer and release agreement, accept $55,000 and vacate within 60 days. My lawyer's name for 40 years of mortgage payments and a roof I patched myself in 2019 was $55,000 in 60 days. I spent Tuesday night sitting at the kitchen table staring at that number. Wednesday morning, I baked the pie. The old man on the train was quiet for a long time after I finished. Then he said, "A father's investment in his child is never small. Whatever they tell you." Something in the way he said it made me look at him carefully. But before I could respond, the driver announced Charles, MGH, and he began to rise. I reached out. "Let me help you up." "Thank you, son." He said it the same way my father used to say it, and something in my chest pulled tight. We moved to the doors together. He asked where exactly I was going. I said Clarendon and Stewart, the Hancock Tower. He smiled, and it was a slow, thoughtful smile, the smile of someone doing arithmetic in their head. "I know that building well," he said. "I'll walk with you part of the way." We came up out of the station into the cold, and I noticed he moved more easily on flat ground than he had on the train. He kept pace without any trouble, which surprised me a little. I offered to take his grocery bag. He waved me off pleasantly. I didn't notice the way he studied the sidewalk ahead of us, the calm precision of his attention, like a man on familiar ground. I didn't notice when he looked up at the Hancock Tower from half a block away with the quiet expression of someone looking at something they built. I was thinking about Marcus, about what I was going to say when I walked through the door, about whether a slice of apple pie could accomplish anything at all. It was 3:40 when we reached the building, 18 stories of glass and steel. The lobby was all dark marble and track lighting and a reception desk that looked like it had been designed by someone who wanted you to feel small on arrival. I held the door for the old man. We stepped inside together. The receptionist, A young man in a gray vest looked up. His gaze went to me first, to my work jacket and my Carhartt pants, then to the old man beside me in his thin coat and worn shoes. His expression didn't say anything he'd have to defend in court, but it said plenty. "Can I help you?" He directed it at me, in the way people ask when they mean the opposite. "I'm here to see Marcus Hartwell. I'm his father." A pause. "Is he expecting you?" "At 4, yes. I'm a little early." He picked up the phone, turned slightly away. I heard him murmur something I couldn't catch. While we waited, a man in his early 40s came through the lobby in a suit that cost more than my truck payment. He slowed when he saw us. He looked at me, then at the old man, then at the paper bag in my hand. Something crossed his face, a kind of social disgust that some people wear openly when they've never had to hide it. He leaned toward the receptionist. "Who's this?" "Says he's Marcus Hartwell's father." The man, whose name I'd later learn was Derek Fossey, senior associate and Marcus's closest colleague, reached for his phone. He stepped toward the elevator bank, lowered his voice, but not enough. "Marcus." "Hey, yeah, your dad's in the lobby. He's got, I don't know, some old guy with him and a paper bag." He listened for a moment. "Yeah, I know. He's already here." He hung up and stood near the elevators, not looking at us directly, but not looking away either. The old man beside me was quiet. He'd positioned himself near the wall beside a large framed photograph, a black and white print of the Boston skyline from the 1970s. He studied it with his hands folded in front of him, utterly still. The elevator opened. Marcus stepped out. My son is 37 years old. He's taller than me now, has been since high school. He was wearing a charcoal suit, silver cufflinks, shoes I'd never be able to justify the price of. He looked like the lobby, like he'd been assembled by the same person who designed the marble floors. He saw me and his jaw went rigid. He crossed the lobby and took me by the arm, not rough but not gentle either, steering me a few steps away from the reception desk. "Dad," I said, 4 o'clock. "I know. Traffic on the red line is unpredictable. I thought I'd come early. Maybe we could. I'm in a meeting that I had to step out of. Derek said you had someone with you?" "Just a gentleman from the subway. I helped him get here." He barely glanced at the old man. His attention was on me, and not in a good way. "I don't have time for this right now. We can talk at 4, sign the papers, and that's it." I held up the bag. "I made you the apple pie. The one with—" He took a short breath through his nose. "Dad, stop." "Marcus, stop." His voice was flat and low. "I'm not 12 years old. I don't need you showing up at my office with baked goods like this is some kind of—" He stopped himself. Started again. "Do you know what it looks like? You coming in here dressed like you just came off a job site? This is Meridian Capital. Our clients are worth hundreds of millions of dollars. Derek's in there right now with a portfolio manager from New York. I just wanted to talk before we—" "There is nothing to talk about." The volume rose slightly, enough that the receptionist stopped pretending not to listen. "The house is in my name. It has been for 22 years. I looked it up. I had our firm's attorneys review it. You have no legal claim. I'm offering you $55,000, which is more than fair, and 60 days to find somewhere else to live. That's the arrangement. Now please stop making a scene in my lobby." My lobby. I stood there holding the paper bag and didn't say anything. I was 65 years old, and I had $34,000 left in savings and a letter from a legal aid office that said my options were limited. I knew what his attorneys had told him. I knew the deed. I'd read it myself by flashlight at the kitchen table at 2 in the morning after getting off a 10-hour shift in 2002, and I'd believed it meant my son would always have a home. I hadn't thought it meant I wouldn't. The old man stepped forward. "Young man." Marcus turned. He looked at the old man the way you look at something that's appeared where it shouldn't be. "Who are you?" "Just an old man from the train." His voice was perfectly even. "Your father helped me this afternoon when no one else would. I wanted to make sure he arrived safely." Marcus looked at Derek. Derek looked at his phone. "Sir," Marcus said, "this is a private firm. I don't know who you are, but this is a family matter, and it doesn't involve you." "You're right," the old man said. "It's a family matter, which is exactly why I can't walk away." Marcus made a sharp sound that was almost a laugh. "Derek, can you call building security?" Derek took a step toward the desk. The old man didn't move. He didn't raise his voice. He just looked at Marcus with those pale gray eyes, the same steady look he'd had on the train, and said, "I've been watching you since you came out of that elevator, son. I've seen the way you speak to your father. I've seen the way you looked at his jacket and his hands and that paper bag. And I've seen this before. A man climbs so far from where he came from that he forgets he had to start somewhere. Forgets someone carried him." "Security," Marcus said again, louder. The elevator behind him opened. A woman stepped out, mid-60s, silver hair cut close, a dark wool blazer, the kind of posture that came from decades of walking into rooms and being the most important person in them. She was carrying a leather portfolio and speaking quietly to someone on her phone. She ended the call when she saw the small crowd in the lobby. Her name was Patricia Weld. She was the founder and managing director of Meridian Capital Partners. Her name was on the wall above the main staircase. Her photograph was in the lobby of the Harvard Business School. She'd been quoted in 3 separate issues of the Wall Street Journal this year alone. She looked at Derek, whose face had gone the color of paste. She looked at Marcus, who had gone very still, and then she looked at the old man in the thin coat standing near the wall. Her leather portfolio hit the marble floor. She said, one word, barely above a whisper, "Clifton." The lobby stopped breathing. Patricia Weld walked forward slowly, the way you walk towards something you're not sure is real. She stopped 3 feet from the old man and stared at him. "Clifton Marsh," she said again. The old man smiled. "Hello, Patricia. What are you? You weren't supposed to be back until how long have you been in Boston?" "A few hours," he said. "I took the train from Back Bay." He gestured toward me. "I met this gentleman on the way." Patricia Weld looked at me. Then she looked at Marcus. Then she looked back at the old man with an expression on her face I don't have a word for. Something between reverence and alarm. "He's the client you were telling me about last fall," she said quietly. "The one you said was... the one I said deserved better representation than he was likely to get." Clifton Marsh nodded gently. "Yes." Derek Fossey took 3 slow steps backward until he was against the wall. Marcus's face had gone completely white. He stopped, started again. "I didn't know who you..." "I know you didn't," Clifton Marsh said, "and there was nothing cruel in it, which somehow made it worse. That's rather the point." Patricia turned to Marcus, and her voice dropped 2 registers. "Marcus, my office." Now, Marcus didn't move. He was looking at the old man the way you look at something that has just rearranged everything you understood about a room. "How do you know him?" His voice cracked slightly on the last word. "Clifton Marsh founded this firm in 1981, Patricia said. "He ran it for 24 years. He brought me on as a junior analyst in 1994 and spent 6 years teaching me everything I know. He has been on our advisory board since 2005, and his personal holdings are managed through a trust that represents 14% of our total portfolio." She looked at Marcus steadily. "He's the reason there is a Meridian Capital. He is why you have a job." Clifton Marsh raised one hand slightly. "I wanted to see how people treated each other when they thought nobody important was watching. It's how I've always made decisions about people." He looked at Derek, who was still against the wall. "About firms, too." He turned back to me. "Your father, by the way, has behaved with more decency in the last 2 hours than anyone else I've encountered in this building today." Marcus sat down. There wasn't a chair. He sat down on the marble floor. Derek made a sound I still can't describe. Clifton walked to the reception desk, asked the young man in the gray vest if he could borrow a pen, and wrote something on the back of a business card. He brought it to Patricia. "I'd like to use one of your conference rooms for a few minutes. Jack and I have some things to sort out." He paused. "Joe, I'm sorry. I've been calling you Jack in my head since you introduced yourself on the train." "Joe is fine," I said. My voice didn't sound like my voice. "Joe, good." He looked at me with those pale gray eyes and a warmth in them now that hadn't been there before. "Will you come with me?" I was still holding the paper bag. I nodded. Patricia pressed the elevator button herself. She turned to Marcus and Derek once, brief and cold as a January morning. "You'll both wait here until I come back." We rode up to the 14th floor together, Patricia and Clifton Marsh and me with my apple pie. The carpet up there was thick, and the offices had views of the Charles River going silver in the late afternoon light. A conference room with a long table and glass walls. Patricia brought water. Clifton Marsh sat across from me and asked me to tell him everything, from the beginning. So I did. I told him the same things I'd told him on the train, but more carefully now. I told him about the $34,000 down payment and the 8 years of saving and the 3 jobs and the agreement with the bank and the bad advice I'd taken on faith. I told him about the $562 a month for 22 years. None of them missed. I told him the house was worth $410,000 and that my son wanted me to take $55,000 and go. I told him I had a letter from a legal aid office in Roxbury that said my options were limited but not zero. Clifton listened to all of it. He asked 3 questions, all precise, about timing and documentation, and then he was quiet for a moment with his hands flat on the table. "Patricia," he said. "I know," she said. "I want your best real estate attorney on this by end of business today." "Already thinking it." He looked at me. "You'll have proper representation. Paid in full by this firm. Not out of charity," he added, before I could say anything. "As a matter of principle, this firm has a responsibility to the people who interact with it, directly or not. What's happened to you is wrong, and it's correctable." I didn't trust my voice, so I just nodded. He looked at the paper bag. "Is that the pie you made?" "Yes, sir." "May I?" I pushed it across the table. He opened it carefully, broke off a piece with his fingers, and ate it slowly with the seriousness of someone paying real attention to something simple. "Apple," he said. "Brown sugar and a little nutmeg. My mother used to make it this way." He folded the bag back. "You're a good man, Joe Hartwell." I cried then. I didn't mean to. I turned toward the window in the Charles River and let it pass. He didn't say anything for a moment. Then, "What do you think your son was afraid of?" I looked back. "Afraid of?" Men who behave the way he did in that lobby are usually afraid of something they can't name. He studied me. "What do you think it was?" I thought about it. Honestly thought about it. The way you can only think about the people you love when you're not in the same room as them. I thought about Marcus at 12 years old bringing his class photo home and asking me not to come to school events because some of the other kids had made comments. I thought about him in high school, introducing me to his friends and watching my hands, the permanent grease under the nails, the calluses. I thought about Candace, who came from a family that had never owned a pair of work boots. He was ashamed of where he came from, I said, and I think he thought I was going to follow him up there forever. Clifton nodded slowly. That shame is his to carry and his to heal. You can't do it for him. He looked at me steadily. But you can refuse to let it cost you your home. 20 minutes later, we went back down. Marcus was still in the lobby. Derek had disappeared. Patricia spoke to Marcus in a low voice near the reception desk for 4 minutes while Clifton and I stood by the elevator. I couldn't hear everything, but I heard the words ethical violation and bar review and professional conduct standards, each one landing like a closed door. When she came back to us, her expression was controlled and precise. She told me the firm's senior real estate attorney would contact me by Friday, that any transfer agreement already prepared would be reviewed and, if necessary, contested, that I should sign nothing until I'd spoken with counsel. Marcus came to stand in front of me. I'd never seen my son look the way he looked in that moment. There's a particular kind of pale that comes from the inside, from the sudden, vertiginous understanding that you have done something you cannot undo. He was that color. He said, "Dad?" I waited. I didn't. He stopped. Started again. I should have. Another stop. "Go home, Marcus," I said quietly. "We'll talk when you're ready to actually talk." He opened his mouth and closed it and nodded once, small and tight. He walked to the doors and pushed through them into the January air. Clifton Marsh touched my arm. "Dinner?" he said. "I know a place on Tremont. Nothing extravagant, but honest." It was the same word he'd used on the train. Honest. "I'd like that," I said. We walked out together into the cold, 2 old men from different worlds, who'd ended up on the same train for reasons neither of us had planned. 6 weeks later, I stood on the front porch of the house on Sycamore Street in Jamaica Plain and held a new deed in my hands, fresh from the county recorder's office. My name, Joseph Arthur Hartwell, sole owner. The attorneys had been thorough and fast. There had been a question of unjust enrichment, of 22 years of documented mortgage payments by a party who had not held title. The transfer agreement Marcus had prepared was withdrawn before it reached a notary. He did not contest it. I think he understood, somewhere under the shame, that contesting it would only make everything worse. He's been suspended from Meridian for 60 days pending an internal ethics review. I don't know yet what happens after that. Derek Fossey was let go, though I was told his departure had more to do with other things Clifton Marsh noticed during what turned out to be an unannounced 3-day review of the firm's personnel culture. I had nothing to do with that. 4 weeks ago, a letter came in the mail, handwritten, 9 pages, front and back, in Marcus's careful left-leaning script. I sat at the kitchen table and read it twice. Some of it was apology. Some of it was explanation. The shame he'd carried, the distance he'd built, Candace's influence, his need to separate himself from a past he'd decided embarrassed him. Some of it was just the sound of a man who'd hit a wall and was sorting through the wreckage. I haven't written back yet. The letter is in the drawer beside the deed. I open it sometimes and read a page and think about what forgiveness actually requires, whether it's a decision you make or a condition you arrive at slowly. I love my son. That hasn't changed. But love isn't the same thing as trust. And trust, unlike a deed, can't be transferred by a court filing. That part is going to take time. Clifton Marsh and I have lunch every other Thursday. He has a daughter in Seattle and a son in London and grandchildren he video calls on Sunday morning. He's been widowed for 4 years, and he told me once, over soup at a diner on Tremont Street, that what he misses most isn't the big things, but the small ones. Soup that someone made for you, a person who remembers that you take your coffee black, the ordinary texture of not being alone. I told him I understood exactly what he meant. He's become family, not the kind you're born into. The kind you find on a Tuesday afternoon when a train lurches through a curve and you reach out your hand because it's the right thing to do, and it's as simple as that. The house looks smaller from the outside than it always did from the inside. The porch sags near the right corner. I need to replace 2 boards before spring. There's a section of gutter that took a hit in the November ice storm, and I've got it patched with flashing tape until the weather improves. These are my problems. Mine to fix, mine to solve, mine to keep. I am not a rich man. I never was. I drove the same truck for 11 years, and I buy coffee at the gas station because the gas station charges $1.50 and the coffee is fine. I don't have a financial advisor or a firm or a portfolio. What I have is a roof over my head that belongs to me in every way that matters, a deed with my name on it, and the phone number of a man who saw me when I thought I was invisible. I want to tell you something I didn't understand until this past winter. 3 things I carry with me now. The first is this: love your children with everything you have, but don't disappear in the process. I gave Marcus so much of myself that I forgot to show him what it looked like to have a self worth keeping. I handed him everything and never said, "And this is mine, this is sacred, this is not transferable." That was my failure as much as anything else. A father's love should build, not erase the person doing the loving. The second, kindness doesn't need an audience to be real, but it doesn't go unwitnessed either. I helped an old man on the train because it was the right thing to do, because my father taught me you speak up when something's wrong, because I couldn't stand there and watch someone fall and not move. I wasn't doing it to be rewarded. I wasn't thinking about anything except the moment in front of me, and that moment turned my entire life around. God has a long view. We don't need to understand it to benefit from it. The third, your dignity is not for sale, not for $55,000, not for 60 days, not for any amount that asks you to act like your life didn't matter. I almost signed those papers. I almost took the money and packed my truck and told myself this was just how things ended up. I want you to hear that. I almost did. And if a train had lurched 3 seconds earlier, if I'd been standing 2 feet to the left, I might have. Don't sign the paper. Get a lawyer. Call the legal aid number. Talk to someone who knows the angles before you give away what you built. These grandpa stories, the ones you hear and share and tell your kids, they aren't just to entertain you. They're maps. They're other people's roads drawn out so you can see where the bridges are before you need to cross one in the dark. If there's a Clifton Marsh in your life, someone who saw you when you felt invisible, call them. Don't wait for a Thursday. Don't wait until you have something worth offering back. Just call. If there's a Marcus in your life, someone who's let shame turn into cruelty, you don't have to carry their weight on top of your own. Set the boundary. Love them from a safe distance if you have to. Wait to see who they become when the consequences arrive. And if you are the Marcus, if somewhere in this story you recognized yourself, I want to tell you that my drawer is still open and the letter is still there. It isn't too late to write the 9 pages. It isn't too late to start over at the part where you remember where you came from. I keep the deed in the kitchen now, in the drawer next to the letter. I look at both of them sometimes. The deed to a house. A letter from my son. 2 pieces of paper. One tells me where I stand. The other tells me what might still be possible. Both of them matter. If this story hit something real for you, hit that like button and subscribe. There are more stories like this one, and every one of them is a reason to keep choosing to be the person who reaches out a hand when the train lurches. Share this with someone who needs to hear it today. Write Amen in the comments if you believe kindness always finds its way home. I'll see you in the next story. God bless.